I've done it. I survived a full month of reserve on the 777. It was easier than I thought it would be. And luckily enough, I didn't even get used every single reserve day. In fact, I had a few days where I was on reserve and got paid to sit at home. I'll review all these numbers here, but for the most part, I enjoyed my month on reserve. Real quick stats: I was used 12 out of 17 reserve days. I only had one trip as a first officer flying. The rest of my trips were relief pilot, meaning I'm the in flight pilot. And almost every trip was to London, the United Kingdom. I did have one trip at the end of the month that was to Tokyo and Narita, but the rest were good old London. Now, as a long haul pilot, I'm given all my trips by crew scheduling. They have a hard job. They are my coworkers. Yes, they are. I'll keep saying that. But they look at all the open trips, and these trips can be open via people calling in sick, vacation, commuting issues, whatever. It doesn't really matter. They look at all the trips, and they look for qualified pilots to assign the trips to. They could give them to long haul, short haul, people that want to fly on their day off, people that need extra flying, whatever. But for me, as a long haul pilot, they have to give me at least 12 hours of notice before I have to be at the airport, not departure, at the actual airport. Now, for my month on long call, every trip I got, I had at least 18 hours of notice. They never called me at the last minute. I had no midnight phone calls for a 1 p.m. showtime. So I had a very relaxed time going to work. I had plenty of time to relax, sleep, rest, pack, and then go to the airport. But that is the part of crew scheduling as far as how I get my trips as a reserve pilot. So how were the trips? Overall, they were great. Four Londons in a row, and then I had one Narita kicker on the end. The first trip to London was a relief pilot trip. It was my favorite, to be honest. Again, I know I'm junior, and then I take what I get, right? I'm not complaining, but I didn't care for this trip and the times the trip operated. We left at almost 9 o'clock at night, and we got to London about 12 noon the next day. Fairly short overnight for a transatlantic crossing, right? It's about 20 and a half hour overnight. We left late morning on the second day, got here about 2:30 in the afternoon on day two. You can see my credit was worth 19 hours and 47 minutes. Now, as a reserve pilot, until all my credit, when they add them together, exceed 73 hours, I get nothing extra. My airline kind of front loads me 73 hours worth of credit. I can fly 0 hours for the month and still be paid 73 hours. If I exceed 73 hours, I get the overage. So the pay listed is what I would get as a line holder and what the trip is worth, but I'm not a line holder. So I'm just putting it there so you would see what the trip would normally pay at my current pay rate. I do get my per diem. That per diem is paid from trip sign in on day one until I finish the trip on day three. And then we have something called an international override here. It's just extra money for being an international pilot. It is what it is. My second trip of the month, also a London trip. This one was an FO trip. I got to fly, and this was my favorite departure times out of my base for London. I call this the gentleman's trip. We leave here at 3:30 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon ish. Get there at 6:30 in the morning, and most of the time we have to kind of slow down and make sure we don't arrive too early to avoid the curfew. A good long overnight. I arrive in London. By the time I get to the hotel, it's about 8:30 in the morning. I take a 3 or 4 hour nap. I'm up for lunch, and I explore from like noon till 8 o'clock at night. I'm out exploring, getting tired and seeing the city. Then I go to bed, and I get up early the next day for the return back to Dallas. We get back around 1 in the afternoon. Again, similar amount of credit, similar amount of pay. The per diem is higher on this trip because I was away from base longer. Again, per diem is paid from trip sign in, so I'm done. And the international pay was the same, almost the same, because it was crossing the ocean same time of time. This next trip was a unique trip. It was an FB trip, a relief pilot trip. At my airline, we have FO, FB, FC. FB and C are relief pilots. This one was a longer trip initially. I think it was a 6-day Boston. Now, we have no Boston 777 base at my airline. We staff it from Dallas currently. The captain did the full thing. I think it's Dallas, Boston, no, Dallas, London, London, Boston, Boston, London, London, Dallas. They didn't have a first officer that could do the whole trip. So I believe one first officer went Dallas to London, London to Boston. Then I deadheaded Dallas to Boston, and I flew Boston to London and London back to Dallas. Very easy. I mean, crossing Boston to London, it's a very short flight. Super easy with 3 pilots on board. Again, very long overnight. Had time to take a nap, explore, relax, and then we left later in the day back to London. Got back a little bit later in the afternoon. Totally fine. Uh, Pay was a little bit higher because of the extra credit involved of deadheading to Boston. I get full pay for deadheads. Per diem higher as well because I was away from home longer than the other trips. And international pay was smaller though because international pay only pays when I'm actually flying an international trip. So I was on the deadhead. I don't get it. I'd be actually. It's weird. It's my airline. Uh, on the fourth trip of the month, again another London trip. FB again is the gentleman's trip I like. 3 o'clock ish departure. Get there at 6ish in the morning. Nice long overnight. Leave semi early, but not too early in the morning on day 3. Get back around noon. Similar pay and per diem and international pay as the other ones were. So I did 4 Londons in a row. Now at this point of the month, I could have been done. At this point, I had 84 hours and 57 minutes worth of credit for the month. I have exceeded 73 hours worth of credit. I did not owe my airline any more reserve days per our CBA between the pilot union and the airline. I think I had 4 reserve days left for the month. Maybe 5. No, 4. 4 days reserve left for the month. I could have just relaxed, gone on vacation, and they still had to pay me for those days. Because again, I've already exceeded 73 hours. Instead, I used a provision of our contract. It's called for pick up extra flying for reserves, and I picked up a Narita trip. And it's supposed to be originally a 25-hour and like 5-minute credit trip. And this all goes on top of the 84 hours and 57 minutes. Well, the trip kind of fell apart. It ended up being a 4-day trip, not a 3-day trip. So it ended up being worth about 27 hours and 32 minutes. But the pay was more, and all that pay, because this is extra flying, does come to me. The per diem is higher because I was away from home longer, almost 48 hours away from home, and my international pay was higher as well because we flew Dallas, all the way to Narita, and then to LA, and then I did head home from LA. So overall, it was a great month. I'm not complaining by any means. I was happy to not have to go to London all month long. I'm used to London. It is what it is. But as far as my first month on reserve as a 777 pilot, it was better than I expected. Flying a 777 is different than flying an Airbus. Being on a multi-person crew, it is nice for a division of duties. When there's only 2 pilots on board, it's half and half, so to speak. When there's 4 pilots on board, things can be divided up really nicely. Like, we arrive to the aircraft, one pilot will do the inside, one person, makes the bunks and does some paperwork. Another pilot can go outside and do the outside pre-flight. It really makes things divided really nicely. On that note, though, it's almost like having 2 distinct crews because we are only all together for takeoff and landing. The normal chatter, banter, I don't, there was no really banter with the captain or first officer because I was really talking to the other FO on board. We don't talk during sterile cockpit, so it's only like this maybe a little bit before flight, a little bit after the flight, and that's it, or on the overnight. So the normal camaraderie isn't the same as on a 2-person pilot crew. But I'm enjoying the 777. It's different than I thought it would be, which I didn't really know what to expect. Am I going to stay on the 777? Probably asking that. I don't know. I'm gonna give it 6 months. I'm gonna give it a full 6 months to see if I really enjoy it. I do miss flying. Being a relief pilot, it's easy, less stress, but I do like flying airplanes. So if I can't get my seniority to move up enough to get at least fly once, twice a month, I might get burned out. That I can see being the biggest issue is not being able to actually fly the plane. But hope you enjoyed my video and my wrap up on my month. I'm sure I put the totals on here somewhere. But if you like my content, please subscribe. If you have questions, comment. I'll get back to you. If you want to send me a direct message, Instagram's probably easiest. I have an Instagram page, same username. Otherwise, have a great day. And as always, thank you for stopping by.